Good morning, my name is Sarah Dunnett and I'd like to start by thanking Peter Llewellyn for inviting me to come to talk to the MedComms network today. My topic is around medical device compliance. This is an emerging speciality. We recognise that compliance of medicines, and we have a lot of rule books and we know exactly what we're doing there. However, medical device compliance is a changing landscape. I'm a pharmacist and I've worked within the pharmaceutical industry for 20 years, and always within the medical affairs function I've really focused in on compliance most recently, and I've been a medical signatory for 11 years. I've now set up an independent consultancy and I'm able to support the pharmaceutical industry, service providers and indeed medical communications agencies to really understand and to grapple with compliance topics so that they can really advance and do well in this area. I'd like to advocate to you that it's really important to understand medical device compliance, because by doing the right thing, the efficient thing, as you're developing your medical communications messaging, you can have operational efficiency and ultimately competitive advantage. So, device compliance. I'm going to talk you through the framework of both legislation and codes for this space so that you can actually support the advertising and promotion of medicines and devices. I'm going to talk to you about the current state, but also some of the emerging rules, and start to think about how things are going to change in the next few years. My aim this morning is very much to share and sort of encourage you to understand a little bit more, because there are very many learnings for your community. I'd like to improve your awareness, your confidence and ultimately your competency so that you can really do some innovative stuff to help the promotion of medical devices. So, the compliance framework. I look at it on a country level, but also at an above country level, so national and supranational level. In the lighter green there, you can see the regulations. I'm going to talk about that because that's something that has just been published this year and will come and impact us. In addition, you can see in the darker green, we can see some European codes, the MedTech European Code, and you can also see at a national level in the UK we have the ABHI Code, the Association of the British Healthcare Industry Code. While that is focused on promotion to healthcare professionals or materials that are intended primarily for healthcare professionals, we do also have to bear in mind the Advertising Standards Authority that talks about the promotion of devices to actually the general public as well. So these are the core areas that I'm going to be talking through. However, we also need to recognise that there are other codes in other countries, and when you're supporting global businesses, you need to make sure that your materials that you develop and your strategies that you develop perhaps are transferable from one country to another. So you can see some other regional and national codes listed here. But also, these codes and laws can't be taken in isolation, and I've listed here just some of the various other regulations that we need to be mindful of. So the European Medical Device Regulations, that was published back in April, came into effect in May, but now we're in the middle of a transition period that will take us through for medical devices through till the middle of 2020, and for in vitro medical devices there's a longer transition period through until May 2022. The reason we have such a long transition period is because these are a transformation on the earlier regulations. Very, very long documents that the pharmaceutical industry, medical device industry and all sorts of providers are really needing to get to grips with. In particular, from a compliance perspective, we need to focus in on Article 7. For the first time, we're actually seeing how the regulations for devices include reference to claims and the importance that any claims that are made through either the supply or the promotion of those devices don't in any way mislead with regard to the intended purpose for that device, the approved purpose, or the safety of the device. We need to make sure that there's balanced risk information being shared. And also we need to make sure it's really clear actually how well that device will perform in the different situations. Now, it's interesting to see that included. Again, it is only just half a page from a massive, massive document. And at the moment, we're developing our understanding exactly how that will be implemented and whether that will be transformed into other guidance documents. So it's something that we need to be aware of and to be keeping a close eye on, because it could potentially transform how medical device promotion is actually managed. In addition to that, I've mentioned the MedTech Europe Code, and you can see here an image from the front of the front cover there. December 2015, and it actually came into force on the 1st of January this year. It takes us through a range of different topics, but interestingly, really, as I've mentioned, it doesn't really give us a great deal of detail around the advertisement and promotion of medical devices. However, a child of this document, and so for example a China code and an American code, and also some other codes from other countries, can actually be compared, and some of those do make some degree of reference to advertising and promotion. And if you visit this website, advamed.org, there is a handy comparison chart that you can look at. A child of the MedTech Code is the ABHI Code, and that has been updated every few years since it was first published back in 2008-2009. We're currently in transition from the March 2016 code through to the current code of May 2017, and that's going to be fully implemented next year. A key part of that that's very important for yourselves is that there is a lot of detail around the advertisement and promotion of medical devices. So when we're thinking about the code, we can recognise the actual guidance and the rule book, but it's also very important for us to learn from the various cases that that body have had to deal with, various complaints, various issues, various questions. Actually, the activity and the caseload for the ABHI code is quite low. And so between 2008 and 2017, there have only been about 30 cases. So what's that, 4 or 5 a year? In comparison to the ABPI code that deals with medicines, that is running at about 50, 60, 70 cases per year. So you can see this is a lot smaller, but will it stay that way? The ABHI are planning to actually publish a summary of the historical cases to their website by the end of the year, so I encourage you to look out for that. It should be very informative. Having spoken to the ABHI, I've got an idea of the kind of cases and the kind of questions that they have been dealing with in this time, and the majority of them absolutely do relate to advertising and promotion. That's the core topic and represents about 1/3 of the number. And really it gets into the nitty-gritty of the claims and the comparisons, and one company perhaps taking exception as to what another company is claiming for their product. The challenge there is that sometimes that actually progresses on to a bit of a tit for tat, and you can consume an amazing amount of management time dealing with those kind of issues. So it's important to get it right straight from the start and be thinking of the patient and making sure that any communication is fully, can be fully substantiated. Another topic of concern is around conference venues and the programmes of conferences. Not so much actually that there's a medtech company concerned about the activities of another medtech company, but more so the conference organisers themselves, whether they be professional bodies, whether they be professional conference organisers, perhaps don't fully understand the requirements of the industry to actually have a dedicated, separate, segregated professional space, etc., and for the actual coverage of that meeting to be of a professional medical standing. And so the ABHI have been hearing from a number of companies to say, they're a bit concerned to be involved with an event which might not actually be as professional as it should be. And so they're often actually referred through to the MedTech European CVS or conference vetting system to really make sure that those conferences are of the appropriate standard. So, how can this be applied by yourselves as medical communications professionals? The ABHI does help us to really understand the rules of how we can do medical device promotion, and it talks through what kind of things you need to consider when setting up and standing on conference booths, through to making sure that all of your claims are accurately portrayed in the various documents. It also talks about sort of checking back, making sure that testimonials and quotations are still valid if you wish to reuse them year on year on year on year. And obviously we still have the requirements to make sure we're not claiming a product as new if really it's beyond that 12 months. So there's lots of detail that you can actually read by going into the booklet, and I do encourage you all to do so. The ABHI code is broadly similar to the ABPI code, so if you're familiar with that, actually the principles do actually carry over. However, because we do not have a summary of product characteristics for a device, therefore we do not have the abbreviated prescribing information or the prescribing information for a device, so therefore that doesn't need to be on the materials. Equally, where you're used to having a formal certification by a pharmacist, doctor, and then a business certifier for the ABPI. For the ABHI, you need to have an approval, but it's not the full certification, and that's not a mandatory step. However, a lot of people do regard it as good practice that you do have somebody suitably senior who really signs off, and you keep that documentation that it has been signed off. And also there are less cases. We will be seeing more, I'm sure, in the coming years as the ABHI and the MHRA actually look at the European medical device regulations and take that forward, and as more work is done in this medtech industry. So it's really important that we keep an eye on this space, and yourselves, as you're working with companies with their devices and supporting them with the promotion, that you recognise and respect the regulatory framework that you're working in is actually developing and changing. So if you'd like to explore this topic further, then please do reach out to me. I'm really happy to have an informal chat, or to really develop up with yourself a programme around consultancy, signatory work, but also perhaps if you have some known gaps of knowledge in your teams, maybe I can support with some bespoke training. So my contact details are there. Please do feel free to reach out. Thank you.